Hello all, I Nirmala Rawat welcome you to my YouTube channel. We will continue with Chapter 8, Part 2. One day, about 3 years after Mata's departure, I found Rohana seated by the sacred fire in tears. She had received news from Mithila that her sister was very ill and suddenly she missed home terribly. I tried to console her, but to no avail. What could we do? We were not in charge of our own fate. She could not decide on her own to return to Mithila. Soma arrived just as I was explaining this to her. When she took stock of the situation, she offered to speak with Maharani Kausalya. And so it was arranged that Rohana would return to Mithila. We had become like a family, sisters in a foreign land, and her departure left another hole in our small circle. I dared not admit that I also longed to return. So many times at night I envisioned being back at the palace, but I realized that with Mata's absence and Janak Baba in retreat, it would not be the same. We could not recreate the past, it was gone, yet I longed for those days. 2 years later, Usha was the next to leave. She left us not for the calm and joy of Mithila, but for the peace of the celestial realms. She took sick and died very suddenly. And then it was just Soma and I who were left to keep alive the sacred fire and Mata's presence. It was not long after that my health began to go. My eyesight was failing, but I dared not tell anyone, not even Soma. I didn't want to burden her with additional care, and I was still able to manage. One morning when I awoke before dawn to recite the mantra by the sacred fire, I tripped as I was leaving my room and had a bad fall. It was a struggle to get to the fire, but I managed. I found Soma there. She had arrived before me. I looked at her in surprise. The mornings were my time. Her watch was sunset and during the night. You are here? I asked. I sensed that you were not well, and so I came, she replied. We both stood there reciting the mantra, and then I turned to go back to my room. Let me help you, she said. Grateful for the assistance, I put my hand on her arm. She led me back to the room and told me to stay there the whole day and rest. She would take over my duties. Despite my protestations, she insisted on bringing my meals and checking on me throughout the day. That evening, she came to sit with me. You are losing your eyesight, aren't you, Meenakshi? I nodded. And you didn't tell me? How long has it been? Many months, I replied in a cracking voice. But it seems to be getting worse now. I didn't want to burden you, Soma, but now I am frightened. What will become of me? What use will this household have for an aged, blind, and cursed servant from Mithila? Surely I will be turned away. Do not speak of the curse, she replied sharply. Didn't Mata once tell you that you are neither aged nor cursed? Then, in a gentle voice, she added, Do you not yet realize that the curse has been your greatest blessing? I looked at her. Those were almost the same words Mata once spoke to me. You sound like Mata, I said. I will find a solution, she replied. Mata always told us there is a solution to every problem, and so there must be a solution to this. Several days later, Soma came with a medicinal liquid and dropped it into my eyes. Every few hours we must apply this, she instructed. Who gave you this treatment? I asked suspiciously. Mata, she replied. Mata? She nodded. She came to me in a dream and told me where to find this plant. I had to look far and wide for it. She instructed me what to do and said, "In a few weeks your eyes will grow stronger." I have told the other servants that you are ill and need a week to recover. We will see how you are then. But the fire, Soma, who will assist you? I don't need any assistance. And the truth is that the fire doesn't really need our mantras. Mata did that for us so we could feel our connection to her. Just as the flame manifested through Mata's will, so it will sustain itself through her will until she returns. But we must continue with the mantra because those were her instructions, and the minute we part from her words, I fear some ill will befall this kingdom. In a week's time, my eyesight was noticeably improved, enough for me to return to most of my normal duties. Several weeks later, my eyesight, if not fully recovered, was good enough for me to perform all my functions. It was around that time that Soma approached me and told me that she wanted to take me someplace just before dawn. She would not tell me where. Why this big secret? A surprise, something that will bring joy to your heart. I awoke earlier than usual, recited the mantra before the sacred fire, and was ready when she came to my room. The two of us quietly left the palace. I followed as she led me to Saryu River, where we walked along its banks. I could hear the quiet sound of women's voices chanting. "What is that?" I whispered. She smiled. "That is what I wanted to show you. Do you remember that spot?" She pointed in the direction where the sound was coming from, and through the early rays of dawn, I recognized that we were in the vicinity where Mata had taken us to meet the river goddess when we first arrived in Ayodhya. I nodded. "That is where Mata played with the river Devi." "Now look and listen," she said. "In that same spot, the women of Ayodhya are praying for Mata. I have seen them come here for years, just before dawn. At first, it was one woman. She came alone and would chant and sing to the river Devi, beseeching her protection for the Rani from Mithila who had gone with their Raja Ram into exile. Then over a time, few more came, and now there are a dozen there, all praying for the protection of our Mata. It moves me so to see their care for her, a foreign Rani they hardly know. Soma, you are right. My heart is bursting at this display of love for her. No greater gift could they give us. One day, when she returns, she will thank those women. But Soma, isn't it odd that they are praying at the very place where Mata entered the waters? Soma smiled. Not at all. Mata was not just playing that day. She was sanctifying the place so that this could occur. I believe she had foresight and wanted to create a place where their prayers could reach her and where she could reach them and bless the women of Ayodhya. Should we go to them? She shook her head. We are from the palace. Let their prayers be undisturbed. We do not know if the palace would approve of women being out so early on their own. We are only let through the gates because we are the servants from Mithila. It gladdened my heart to think of those women singing by the river, and often at night when I felt tired, lonely, or sad, the memory of their song lightened my spirit. 7 years had passed since Mata's departure, and my body was becoming more and more frail. Privately, I did not think I could survive another 7 years until Mata's return. But when my mind thought this, I would recall her last words when she said that she would see me again. Perhaps I had imagined it. I had not heard her speak those words out loud. I had merely heard them in my mind. One day I shared this concern with Soma. You did not image that, Meenakshi, because I heard those words as well. I heard her say that she would see you again, and so it must be. There is nothing that can change that. You heard her speak to me in my mind? I asked, astonished. Soma looked away, and I didn't know whether she was saying that to comfort me or whether she really heard the words. Go to the river, Meenakshi. Go to that spot where Mata took us. You will find your answer there. It was several days before I could get away, but finally I managed to go alone one morning and stand at the very spot where we servants had accompanied Mata, where the women of Ayodhya now came in the early morning to sing and pray for Mata. The spot that was now sanctified. I slipped off my sandals and for the first time entered the river. If only I could bring back those days in Mithila, I thought to myself. Those days when we were so carefree. Suddenly, the burden of all the years of absence came over me, and I could not restrain the tears. Sinking down unto my knees, I let the water swirl around me. It was past dawn, and the women were now gone. I was alone in the water and could wash my face with my tears. I quietly cried, Mata, I am trying to wait for you, but my body will not. I will not last until your return. I am so sorry, Mata, that I will not be here to welcome you. As I spoke these words, I heard a voice, quiet as gentle breeze brushing over me, almost inaudible. Did I not promise that you will see me again? I could not tell if the voice was coming from inside me or from the external world, but something made me turn around. And there I saw her standing at the edge of the river. I was speechless. My tears ceased and a quiet joy entered my heart. Then welcome me home now, Meenakshi, she said in a gentle voice. Mata, you have come back? With a faint smile, she said, You will catch a chill, Meenakshi, if you stay in the water like that. Just then I noticed my body was trembling from the cold. She walked a few steps into the river and helped me rise. Then she took off her shawl and wrapped it around me. I wanted to express my love for her, to tell her that I would serve her throughout eternity. But the words would not come. No sound emerged. She nodded, as if receiving my love, and added, You do not need to see this body to know I am with you. Not just for this life, Meenakshi, but for all time. Then, with a broader smile, she turned and walked into a small gathering of trees. I tried to follow, but stumbled and couldn't get to her. A few minutes later, I made my way over to the trees, but she was nowhere in sight. I stood for a few minutes in awe, perplexed by what had just happened. Then slowly I returned to the palace in a daze. When Soma saw me, she exclaimed, Meenakshi, how did you get Mata's shawl? Mata wrapped it around me when she saw how wet I was from the river. I replied in a stunned voice. The water was washing over me. She said I would catch a chill. She took it from her shoulders and wrapped it around me herself. Come with me. Soma took me by the hand and led me to Mata's room. This is the very shawl I laid out for her today. It is missing. All the other clothing is here. Are you sure you did not come to the room and borrow it? Soma, would I ever do that? I exclaimed, horrified that she would suggest such a thing. But those are the very clothes I saw her in. Look, Soma, the hem of her clothing is wet. She was standing by the edge of the water. How did it get wet if her clothing was here in the room? And if you laid out the shawl, how did Mata have it? I don't understand. Soma nodded, a smile creeping across her face. She replied quietly, now I understand. Mata wanted you to know that your experience was real. You really saw her. She came to bless you. This is her sign to you. The experience brought such peace and comfort to my heart. The weeks passed. One day, I was too weak and tired to rise from my bed. Soma came to me. She seemed to know what was in store. I hope all your desires have been put to rest. I nodded and whispered faintly, my only hope is that in the future I can continue to serve her. I drifted off to sleep. When I awoke, I found Soma still sitting by my side. I had the most beautiful dream, Soma. We were back in Mithila, you and I, with Mata in the forest. Do you remember the forest? I asked in a faint voice. She nodded. How I wish we could be back in Mithila with her. Do not think of Mithila, Meenakshi. You are in Ayodhya now. And here is where we have to serve Mata. Here in Ayodhya. But I never felt at home in Ayodhya. You will, Meenakshi. You will. And you will be here. My voice trailed off. I no longer had the energy to speak. Soma was quiet for a few minutes and then replied, I will be here. I gazed at Soma, too weak to speak. She had been such a dear friend, more than a friend really. In her presence, I felt close to Mata, as if she was reaching me through Soma. Why did she come? I gathered the strength to ask. That morning by the river? Soma shook her head slightly as she looked out into the distance. It was out of love. That is who she is, love itself. And that love extends to all, to every creature. She makes no distinction because we are all her children. Then turning to me, she said softly, the purpose of Mata's birth is to awaken that love, the love that permeates the celestial worlds, to awaken that love on earth. And this is what she is doing every moment of her life. I didn't understand. I knew nothing of the celestial worlds. But then I remembered Mata's words to me as she was departing Ayodhya. You will see me again, she had said. And so now I realized Mata had come because she had given her word. A great sigh passed through my lips, as if all my burdens of life were being lifted. I didn't have to wait for Mata any more. Soma would be here to receive her. I had seen over the last few years how Soma had gained a respected place in the household. All the servants now came to her for advice and guidance. Even the Maharanis depended on her. She would not be alone, unlike me, who had never integrated into the household. She was a part of Ayodhya now. I alone had maintained my Vaidehi identity, but still the thought of leaving her was difficult. A deep bond of affection had grown between us. Soma, you will wait for Mata. My faint voice trailed off. Meenakshi, she said gently, gazing into my eyes. I have never been waiting because Mata has never left me. I smiled. Soma was unlike the rest of us. She was a mystery, one I could never fathom. But her words gave me comfort, and they were the last words I heard before my eyes closed to the world. Here we here is the end of part 1. This book consists of 2 parts. Next time we'll start part 2 with chapter 9. Thank you. Do like, comment, share. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.